Hello and welcome to Shattered Lives. My name is Paul Healy and I'm joined by Michael O'Toole all the way from Lebanon. How's it going, Michael?
I will never complain about the M50 again, Paul. Jesus Christ.
What's it like over there?
I'm not my usual suave and sophisticated self. I'm all hot and bothered. I just got into the hotel 15 minutes ago. So we were down, just to explain, we were down in southern Lebanon visiting the Irish troops who are part of UNIFIL, the 126th Infantry Battalion. So it was a 2.5 hour drive on the way back. We got back just there a while ago. So it was a couple of day trip, but the traffic in Beirut was absolutely horrendous. And we were in a minibus. We'll have to wear body armor, had a helmet and everything, no aircon, couldn't open the windows. And Jesus Christ almighty, God help me, I was nearly dying.
Jesus, you look a bit wiped there now, to be fair.
I do look a bit wiped.
But it shows you your commitment to this podcast, that you are willing to tune in and speak to us today all the way from Lebanon. And you're doing a lot over there, to be fair. So just to inform people, you're over there with the Irish contingent of UNIFIL, right? So just tell us a bit about their mission there. And it is coming to a close, isn't it?
More than likely. So UNIFIL is the United Nations interim force in Lebanon. Now, interim is the key word there. It has been running since, well, the Irish have been there on and off since 1978. They were there effectively the whole time, apart from a couple of years, maybe 2001 to 2006, then maybe 2006 to 2008, and then back in 2011 have been there ever since. So they're peacekeepers. Now, they're well known in the area for their peacekeeping, and they're very well regarded for their peacekeeping. And the lab, as it's called in the Defence Forces, really is an institution in so many homes across Ireland and beyond. The thousands of Irish men and women soldiers and members of the Defence Forces have served here. So there is the current contingent is the 126th. Now it's got 333 members, and they're out there monitoring. There was a cessation of violence between Israel and Hezbollah, who control effectively much of southern Lebanon, where the Irish are based. So that cessation of violence after a really bloody war came into effect in November last year. But there have been breaches of the ceasefire practically every day by the Israelis. While we were here, there was a mortar attack about 5 kilometres from UNP 245, which is Camp Shamrock, where most of the Irish soldiers are based. There were drones flying overhead when we were there. There was a drone attack. A few kilometres away from where we were. They fired 3 rockets, 3 missiles, but they missed. So there is activity by Israel every single day. Now, we're over here. I try to come over every year to visit the troops and do stories. Usually it's with either the Tánaiste or the Taoiseach. This time we were with Lieutenant General Ross Mulcahy, who's the new Chief of Staff of the Defence Forces. So he came over, visit the troops, take part in the medal process. But the underlying problem, I suppose, is that UNIFIL, because of a lack of American support, it's a United Nations thing. Because of a lack of a United American support, UNIFIL is effectively closing down at the end of 2026. So that'll be practically maybe 47 years service on and off by the Irish there, and 48 Irish peacekeepers have lost their lives here. In fact, in UNP 245, the Irish camp, there is a tribute and a memorial, I suppose, to Private Sean Rooney, who was shot dead by a Hezbollah activist in December 2022. That the wounds are still very raw for the Defence Forces about the loss of Private Rooney and the other 47 peacekeepers who lost their lives here since 1978. So look, I always like coming over here because I really enjoy working with the Defence Forces. We're very, very lucky to have them. I say that all the time, and it's always a privilege to come over and cover them.
Yeah, and I mean, the death of Private Sean Rooney, I mean, thankfully he's an outlier, but it's still a horrific event. But I mean, obviously it's quiet where you are now, but even you've just highlighted there are drone incidents, so it can all kick off at a moment's notice. Do you feel safe there now in your, I mean, you're obviously well protected with them around you, but I mean, is there that sense, and I'm sure you've been briefed of the possibility that anything could happen at any moment and what to do in that case?
Yes, so there's a thing called groundhog, which is where you have to get to the nearest shelter, and you do have to I'm not wearing my body armour now because I'm in Beirut and in a safe hotel. There's armed soldiers, Irish soldiers are here to protect various people who are here. So look, yes, you do feel safe, but you are in a war zone when you're down there. And, you know, it's big boys rules. So you really have to be very careful where you go, and you have to follow the instructions of the military personnel at all times. You know what journalists are like, Paul. We're very, you know, egotistical and very self-centered. And as I want to do this and I want to do that. See down here, no messing. You do what the captain or the lieutenant or the sergeant or the corporal tells you, and there is absolutely no messing, because they're the experts and we're not. I will say, we did speak to, there are 14 villages in the Irish, what's called the AO, the Irish Area of Operations. There are 14 villages. We went to one on Tuesday, a place called Cuneen. It's about 10 kilometres, I think, from the Irish camp. And we spoke to the local mayor. He is very worried that once UNIFIL, including the Irish, pulls out end of December 2026, January 2027, then Israel will come in. And we were speaking to a senior Irish officer who has spoken to the mayors of all 14 villages, and he said they expressed exactly the same fears. And what the locals are telling the Irish is that now that Gaza appears to be sorted out and the cessation appears to be holding there, that Israel will turn its attention to southern Lebanon. As I said, it's a power base for Hezbollah. Now, Hezbollah did fire thousands of rockets into Israel. So, you know, there's a context for everything. But they are very worried that they will effectively launch another invasion, especially when the UN goes, when there's no outside witness to see what's going on here. So it's bad times, actually. They are really worried. I want to just point out one thing, that we will be doing a special pod. I brought my gear with me, and I carried out several interviews of Irish personnel and locals. So that should be coming out next week. Very, very interesting.
I just want to, you might be in the podcast, so stop me if you don't want to talk about it too much, but I think you interviewed Father Paul Murphy, who's the chaplain there today, and people would know of Father Murphy because of the horrific attack that he suffered, jihadi attack that he suffered in Galway. Was it last year? Yes. I think? Yeah.
A 17-year-old boy was jailed for it. And if anybody remembers Father Murphy's victim impact statement, it was really remarkable, because he spoke of forgiving this young male who had done this. Yes, we did speak to him for quite a while. I won't go into too much details, because I'm writing a story about it today for tomorrow. But what struck me about Father Paul, he's the chaplain to all these soldiers. So he's a spiritual advisor, he's a priest, he's a social worker, he's a shoulder to cry on. I must say, it's the first time I've met him. He's a remarkable man. And I sort of got the sense that he's a very serene and very at peace with himself man. So I think he's happy out, but it just struck me, he's very holy, really. And I was just struck by his serenity. Remarkable man. So we're doing the chat. I'm writing it up once I finish this pod, so it should be in the Mirror and the Star on Friday.
No, I look forward to reading that. I mean, I was always struck by the level of grace and forgiveness that he had for his attacker, really. And he was lucky not to have been killed in that incident.
You've been very busy in my absence.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, it's been another busy week. Crime, look, it never does sleep, and that is our job in a way. It keeps us busy too. But there was a terrible incident yesterday in North Dublin in Donamead involving very young people, to be honest. I mean, this is just horrible. A 17-year-old, a child, really. I mean, okay, he's a year out from 18, but really, I mean, 17 as a child, was brutally murdered, stabbed to death in an apartment out in Donamead. And what we know now, and I suppose it colours the incident in another light, in that there's plenty of commentary about it. In that the individual who lost his life here is an asylum seeker and is from Ukraine, had only been here 4 days.
4 days?
Yeah.
Oh, I see. I don't really know much about this, because I've been working and traveling. So the listeners probably know more about it than I do. So.
Yeah, well, look, I'll tell people about it, because in fairness, they might not have read everything, but I'll tell them even what we know today. The deceased, his name is Vadim Davydenko, and he is, as I say, from Ukraine. He was stabbed a number of times, and apologies for the graphic nature of this, but I have to describe to you the gravity of the crime. He was stabbed in the head, he was stabbed in the eyes, he was stabbed in the chest, and he also was stabbed in the hands. Obviously would be defensive wounds. The person who attacked him was also residing in the apartment and is a Somalian resident, also seeking asylum, also under the age of 18. And I'm told, like, this is was a horrible incident. Gardaí got there as fast as they could, and the emergency services, and what they came upon was this person still in a frenzied state, the attacker. And I'm told that the first Gardaí that arrived at the scene were not armed. So obviously armed Gardaí were called, but the first guards to arrive, would have been the regular from the Coolock Garda station, really, and they came upon this attacker and they subdued him, and really it was quite a violent moment, I'm told, and they're very, very fortunate that no one else was more seriously hurt by this individual. Effectively tackled him and subdued him before armed Gardaí arrived and arrested him. So I mean, as horrendous as the incident was, and there were 2 other people injured, the attacker himself and a woman as well who was in the apartment was also injured. So it could have been far worse even. And
that was really shocking. I think there is a protocol that armed Gardaí, the armed support unit, are called to every incident where there's a stabbing. So, but yes, but as you say, the regular unarmed uniformed members were the first ones there. Were any of them injured? Was there any? There was a struggle, obviously.
I don't believe so, thankfully. But obviously the attacker himself was injured. How exactly he got those injuries to his hands, I don't know. But he was initially arrested, I'm told, but he was then brought to the hospital because he required treatment. And right now, so the development right now is, I understand that he's going into surgery today. So Gardaí are keeping a watchful eye on this person, but he's not currently under arrest. He's not being questioned, but he is the only suspect in this case.
And just to explain, the detention stops when the clock stops ticking. So as you say, my understanding is he was arrested, but the clock stops ticking when somebody goes to hospital. So who knows how long that could be. Just as was said, I don't really know much about this. Has there been any idea what caused this or why he was attacked?
I mean, look, I mean, that is a tense environment that they were living in. I don't know whether these individuals would have known each other personally until they came to live in this apartment with each other. It is an apartment that is under the control of TUSLA, so the State's Child and Family Agency, because they're all underage IPAS applicants. And so I'm told the tensions would have been high. There is talk of an argument over food, that's possibly what caused it, what sparked it. But obviously you're taking a knife out and you're stabbing somebody, you're in a frenzy. What kind of state of mind are you in the first place? And I'm told it was quite a frenzied attack. I mean, I outlined to you the injuries that were sustained there, and that there was a woman also injured in the incident. It tells you that this person, and then that the Gardaí had to step in, that this person was very difficult to control. I spoke to neighbours there as well, and they were telling me that they heard a lot of banging and they heard screaming, and they saw the attacker being brought out on a stretcher. And I think there was video footage actually that emerged of that. But we got quite an interesting statement from TUSLA actually, and I just want to get it. But they made quite a lengthy statement acknowledging that this, property is something that they are in control of. So people might typically think like an IPAS centre or whatever, it's a separate thing. But this is a residential apartment complex where there were lots of families and people just living their years. A lot of them unaware of the fact that this apartment, I think on the 2nd or 3rd floor, was actually housing IPAS applicants under the care of TUSLA. And so TUSLA have said that their priority now is for the other individuals in that property, and that they are taking care of, that is effectively their immediate priority at the moment. That's how I have it now. Their immediate priority is the safety and well-being of the other people, the other young people and staff at this unit. We're providing additional supports to all young people and staff directly affected, and making efforts to contact the families of young people who are residing there. So again, this is the other thing. I mean, this young boy who's lost his life, he came from Ukraine, war-torn Ukraine, and I would imagine that there are difficulties in contacting his loved ones.
And can I ask, Paul, the woman who was injured, do you know, was she a state worker, or was she an IPAS applicant herself? Do we know?
I don't know that, but making an assumption that that is the case. Yes, because she would have been an adult in the apartment, whereas the rest of them were all, yeah, but I wouldn't know that 100%. You know, but they were all they're all international protection applicants, and they're all under the age of 18, and so TUSLA has responsibility for them. I did think it was interesting, and I'm only going to just note this briefly, that it's funny how certain usual suspects only show up at certain scenes. People can have their commentaries about this. Look, there's a lot of discussion at the moment about international protection and all of that, but in the end of the day, I just think on a human level, you're talking about a child here, a child who has fled a war-torn country, and sadly whose life was taken here in Ireland. It's just a tragedy.
Has there been, I presume there has been, I haven't seen any, has there been a lot of online commentary about this?
Yeah, I mean, look, people have their commentary about, you know, the safety of having asylum seekers housed in an apartment complex full of families. In the end of the day, these are children. And I think a different conversation really needs to be had about, you know, why is it that young people are reaching for the knife? You know, why is the knife the solution to a problem? How does that come into an argument? See, knife crime definitely, anecdotally anyway, seems to be on the up. But look, we have seen and talked about plenty of examples where Irish people have carried out random acts of depravity also. But again, I think that's a conversation for others to have as to whether there's I'm not seeing anything, and I think you might back me up on this, at least statistically, that backs up that there's any increase in criminality with foreign nationals, with asylum seekers, as opposed to any other grouping.
No, the last, you'll know, and listeners may remember that I do an annual homicide feature, record of every homicide. Now, we call it homicide because some are murder and some are manslaughter. So we can't call alleged cases of manslaughter murder, because that's legally unsound and we could be in trouble for that. But look, I remember around the time of the Asylum Murphy murder, I looked at it, and from memory, 15% of victims were foreign nationals, but 13% of aggressors or suspects or people who have been convicted in a year were foreign nationals. So there, you know, in that year, and I do sort of look at that every year, and it chimes with everything, not scientific, but just everything that I've looked at before. All the cases, there are more victims who are foreign than aggressors who are foreign. Now, I haven't done last year's or this year's in that sense, but I do, because I did look at around the time of the murder of Asylum Murphy, and obviously that was Joseph Puska was obviously a foreign national. So, but I did look at it. So look, in that year, definitely there were more foreign victims and foreign aggressors.
And that's not to say that, you know, it's obvious, isn't it? I mean, again, but I think it's a conversation maybe should be had by experts, but just look at the background of the individuals we're talking about here. These are people who are fleeing war-torn countries, who are living in a close, confined space with one another. Obviously an environment that and I'm not making excuses for the actions of this killer, by the way. What happened is horrific, and they deserve to be met with the full rigor of the law, but you can see how the circumstances can create tensions, and there are mental health problems that are likely there also. So all I would say is there should maybe be more of a conversation about that aspect, as opposed to maybe the color of their skin.
Yes, and it might be a discussion for another day, but what we can say at this stage is the person is technically in custody, but is in hospital. So once that person is deemed medically well enough to be questioned, he'll be brought to the local Garda station, I presume Coolock Garda station, and his period of detention will kick in. And it will likely be Section 4 of the Criminal Justice Act, which means guards have 24 hours, not including breaks. So a day and a half, really.
Yes.
To hold him before he must be charged or released.
And I think there is a bit of a delay as well in terms of the post-mortem. I think only as we're talking now, the post-mortem is taking place. The body was only removed late in the afternoon. I think actually it was nearly 5 o'clock in the evening yesterday. And it was a particularly bloody horrific scene, and we actually could see, and you very rarely can see this, but because it was an apartment complex, you could see on the stairwell the forensic, the members of the Garda Technical Bureau taking photographs up and down the stairs. So it's, I'm sure they're looking for blood spatter wherever they can find it. So it'll be a complex enough investigation, I'm told, even though obviously they only have one suspect and he's not going anywhere. But I anticipate it'll be at least 24 hours before we're talking about anybody in custody.
It sounds horrific anyway.
It's just horrible. I think, again, if you want to get into conversations about this, that, and the other, that's fine. I'm not here to have them, but I just think in the end of the day, it's a tragedy, and it is a child that's lost his life, and no doubt his family, I don't even know if they know now at this stage, and that's sad in its own right. Shall we talk about Jonathan Dowdall?
Yes, please do.
Right. I think this might be the last time we ever talk about Jonathan Dowdall, unless he suddenly emerges from the shadows where he's not supposed to. But Jonathan Dowdall was released from Limerick prison this morning, which is it's just over a week. You didn't know that, did you?
I didn't know that, no. Wow.
He's out as of this morning, yeah. Which, look, we always anticipated that it was not going to be on the actual date of the 29th of October, which was the final day that they could detain him. But yes, under the cover of night, well, somewhere around 6 a.m. this morning. As the sun was rising, he was taken out of Limerick prison by Gardaí, and he has now officially entered the witness protection programme. I have a lot of thoughts on this, I'm sure you will too, and you can tell us maybe a little. In fact, do, because we talked about this before, but you have a good understanding of the witness protection program and the options maybe that are there for someone like him.
Yes, it's called the Witness Security Program. Everybody calls it the Witness Protection Program because it's the old WSP. So it's basically, it's a way for people who have cooperated with Gardaí in major investigations but who are under threat themselves, in other words, their security, to start a new life abroad. Now, one thing I will say, just by magic, you or I found out where Jonathan Dowdall is. It's a criminal offence to say where he is. Now that he is in the security program, we're not allowed to mention anything about his location. We'd be in serious trouble if we did. There's been lots of speculation, but we can't get into it. It's a criminal offence, but people have mentioned various countries. So what this means is basically Mr. Dowdall and other members of his family, I understand, they're now in the program, and they're starting a new life abroad. Now, it's not like the movies where the guards, give this fella £1 million and, they're constantly there. It's a reciprocal program. So Gardaí would rehouse someone. I'm going to pick someone where I know it won't be. So from another country, right? Someone who gave a witness in another trial in another country can start a new life, and the guards can go, yeah, we'll take that person here. Okay. And by the same token, the guards can go to another country and say, look, there's a witness security program applicant. He's been accepted to it, and we are going to give him this new life overseas. Will you take him in? Now, they can say yes, they can say no. I have to say I was sort of surprised because do you remember a couple of years ago when this all started, there was a belief that Ireland may find it difficult to get a country to accept this man because he was involved in serious criminality. As you can tell people, in a previous crime, he waterboarded a man. That's pretty heavy. And was he dealing with dissidents?
Oh, yes. I mean, he's dealt with everybody, yeah.
So, what country, and obviously some country has, but we were told a couple of years ago, look, it might be very hard because what country is going to want to let a criminal like that into their jurisdiction? But obviously he has. Now, here's the way it works. Guards will help him move, but really, and they'll sort of, the local police, whatever country it is, will offer a certain level of protection, but he and the other Dowdall family are effectively on their own. It won't be that they're getting a salary from the guards or from whatever country they're in. He has to start a new life. He might get some seed capital, sort of equivalent to the lifestyle that he had in Ireland. So say if he was on 90 grand a year, he would get the equivalent sort of the start. It could be for 3 months pro rata. You know what I mean? It's not like he's given 200 grand a year. He's on his own.
But here's a question I had for you because I was curious given what you knew about the program. So we know that Jonathan Dowdall has sold his house, right?
Yes.
So he's got at least €800,000 from the sale of that house, right? But as you mentioned, because this is what I wanted to ask you, you mentioned the like for like scheme and how he would be given the equivalent of what he had here. So will he be gifted a house and he still has €800,000, or would he have to? Okay, how does that work?
No, it's and I think it's only for a certain amount of time that they'll go work out pro rata, whatever, say 90 grand a year. You might get 3 or 4 months of that, but there's no buying a house for him or anything like that. He has to look after that himself.
Right. Okay.
So it's basically they're giving him a new life. There will be certain expenses, but not. I would be amazed if it was even 40 grand for the whole thing. Really, because I did speak to someone who was heavily involved in the witness security program a couple of years ago, and he explained the whole thing. It's not like it is in the movies where he gets £1 million a year or something. No, that's not happening. The security aspect is he gets a new identity and the others get a new identity, and there will be security given to him and available to him. And there might be a caseworker in the whatever police force it is, but it's not going to be on the taxpayer's dime that he gets a new life all by himself. He'll have to work for it.
Now
we know he works.
To be fair, an awful lot of it is at the taxpayer's dime in terms of facilitating getting him to the country and all of that. I mean, that is at our expense.
Yes, but I'm not. There's not going to be 3 ERU lads sitting with him in wherever country is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The local police will be aware. They will presume at the start they'll be offering protection and stuff. But he has to start this new life by himself. He will be helped by local police, and they'll be there for him in any event of any crisis. And the really important thing is relocation and new identities. Apart from that, I think that's really it.
Interesting. So I was of the assumption, and again, we know so little about this, and I only know because you had a conversation with somebody. You learned an awful lot about it more recently, but even still, there's a lot about it that's quite secretive, isn't there? And we will just never know the ins and outs of it's that kind of tightly kept. But I was curious whether, and you've answered it, whether he was going to be in clover. He effectively had just got 800 grand from the sale of this house, and he was being given a free house. So at least there's not that. But I still have a real, and I understand completely why this has had to happen, but in principle, I have a real problem with it. That you and I, the taxpayer, have effectively funded for this man to be given a new life. Okay, now it's not going to be the easiest life, and as you've just outlined, it's not like he's in clover either. But you're talking about someone who's convicted of torture. He waterboarded a man. Now, listen, Alexander Hurley, the victim in this case, is a convicted fraudster and has his own issues, and Jonathan Dowdall believed that he was being frauded, but that is still absolutely not under any circumstances an excuse to then detain this man and to literally torture him for hours on end. And Mr. Hurley, who's changed his name since, did not deserve what happened to him. But Jonathan Dowdall went to prison for that, and then he went to prison for facilitating the Regency Hotel murder, the most infamous gangland murder in the history of the state, arguably, for which he booked the hotel room that was used by Kevin Murray, flat cap, in the shooting. Him and his father helped book that room. There was plenty of evidence in relation to that. And then he was up and down the north of Ireland with Jerry the Monk Hutch, and we heard all about their conversations, much of which, if it was incriminating, it was Jonathan Dowdall incriminating himself, not the other way around. And then he gave evidence, if we can call it that, for the state in the trial of Jerry the Monk Hutch, which effectively, there was no evidence to begin with, but that sealed the decision by Justice Tara Burns to acquit Jerry Hutch.
So yes, he's hardly a Sunday school teacher.
No, yeah, sorry, that's it. I went on such a rant there. I forgot my original point. Yeah, that's my point. Is he is? I mean, this is a gangland criminal, right? Let's call him for what he is, who associates with dissident Republicans and gangsters, who tortures people, or who tortured a person, who had absolutely no remorse really for what he did, and who now is being protected by the state. But the reason why I can understand, because look, God forbid anything ever happened where Dowdall was shot dead in the street, the state would be blamed for that. But apart from that, he has a family who are innocent of all of this, and they don't deserve what's happened to them. Now, I largely think it's his fault, but he has a wife, he has children, and he has a father. Well, his father was involved in the book in the room as well, but otherwise not really a known criminality. These people don't deserve to have threats hanging over them, and so I can understand why all of them as a unit have to be given protection. So I understand why the decision was made, but in principle I have a real problem with it when it comes to Dowdall himself.
And I'm sure it sticks in the craw of a lot of people. And I suppose the real point is, it's for the clues in the title about security. Gardaí must have decided that there was still a significant threat to his life.
Yes, and I think that's reasonable when you consider just some of the things that came about in the trial and the things that he said. He had bad-mouthed just about every member of the Kinahan cartel that there was. He was in bed with the Hutches. And then he turned around and he bad-mouthed the Hutches, be it Patsy Hutch, Jerry Hutch himself, and others. And in his own evidence on the stand actually said that he had everything wrong, that he wanted to apologise to the Byrne family, and that it was the Hutches that started the feud, and that Jerry Hutch, the man across from him, was the bad guy. So he literally pointed at this guy and maligned him. And we know of the existence of the Hutch criminal organisation, and so there is no doubt a concern of a threat there from the Hutches, from the Kinahans, and from dissident Republicans who Jonathan Dowdall also managed to piss off in the course of his time getting into bed with all these criminals. So, yeah. It's a no-brainer that they have to protect this guy, even though I'm sure it's through gritted teeth.
I think gritted teeth is the phrase. And I think, look, I wouldn't be party to this, but I wouldn't be surprised if there was significant reluctance to get this man involved for the reasons we both given, heavy, serious criminality in what country took him. So I think the guards probably did well to get another country to accept him.
Yeah, I wonder, and look, this is a conversation that's going to go on for some time, but, will questions ever be asked, or will there be a review ever done of the decisions that were made to go and to interview Jonathan Dowdall, to take him out of prison and to listen to him at length at what they did, to take him seriously, and for him to effectively become the pillar of the state's case against Jerry Hutch, when they already had no evidence. That desperate decision to use him when he was so obviously a liar, it's embarrassing, and hopefully nothing like it ever happens again. I mean, the state was left with egg on its face using this guy. And now, okay, he's going to be looking over his shoulder for the rest of his life, but, he's being taken care of again at the expense of you and I. It's disgusting.
I think a lot of people would be very unhappy about that. And as I said, I don't think Gardaí will be over the moon themselves.
No, to be fair, they're not. Oh, I'm not going. I thought you were going to make more criticism there, but you're not going to, are you? You're going to let me.
No, look, I mean, no. Look, it is what it is. I mean, I didn't think he was going to be accepted onto the witness security program. I have to say, and I wasn't watching it for the last wee while, but I thought there was a very strong possibility because for the things that I've outlined, the reasons I've outlined, what country would take him. So obviously the guards have or the Department of Foreign Affairs or whoever it is have strong enough relationships with other countries to get them to persuade them to let him in.
And the only hint we have of the cost of this is if you can go via FOI to get the amount that in expenses that the program requires every year. And I think it was something like 1.8 million last year, which is the highest it's ever been. So you can only imagine Jonathan Dowdall, his wife and his children and his father, the expense of that. This is probably going to be their most expensive year, I'm sure, in terms of just facilitating that. It probably... I mean, do you know of other people that were put in witness protection? Is this the most challenging thing that they've had to do in recent years? I think there's only about a dozen people ever that have been admitted into this.
If you look at Charlie Bowden, who was a state witness against John Gilligan for the murder of Veronica Guerin, he was on it, and he was heavily involved in criminality with the Gilligan gang. So that was a very big murder of a journalist. of a crime journalist was obviously an attack on democracy. So that was a real big, high stakes investigation. So that was, I'd say that was up there of its time, of that generation. It would have been around the same level as this, the Dowdall incident. So yeah, there are big issues there.
But while Charlie Bowden kept his head, underground, is Jonathan Dowdall really going to be able to do that? Is he the type of person, I mean, just knowing his personality, that's going to be able to never seek that kind of limelight again?
Is he a bit of a hot-headed egomaniac who could fly off the handle very easily if somebody, bumps into him in a pub or whatever? You never know. But you know what? Even if he is arrested, we won't be able to say it and won't be able to give his name. So you can't give his new name, you can't give his location. So,
but there's a lot of challenges to this, and I'll just leave it at this. The age of social media that we're in now today, it's only going to take somebody to recognize him on the street, start filming him, for it to end up on TikTok. It goes viral. At what point, when it's everywhere, do you sort of say, like, this is ridiculous, like, to ignore this now is, are they going to jail the journalists for ignoring it, or every single person on TikTok? I think it's going to be a real challenge.
Yes. So there was no TikTok or Instagram or Twitter when Charlie Bowden was given his new life, because that was real high profile. It was really, really high profile. Maybe I said same profile, maybe higher than Dowdall. So look, he got away with that because there was no social media. There is social media now. So look, we can't even speculate where it could be, because that could probably land us in trouble. But maybe he's gone somewhere remote. Who knows? I don't know.
Well, the only thing I'll say is I have already seen some concerning social media posts. Now, that's about all I can say. But it hasn't even been 24 hours. Wow. So I just think hopefully this, and I'm sure it has been well thought out in advance ahead of time, how they're going to deal with this. But as you said, once he's given that new life, he's on his own then, bar being able to check in with the local police wherever he is, so.
We'll
best of luck, Jonathan Dowdall.
We won't see how he'll get on because we won't know.
Yeah. No, we won't. Listen, that's the end of the Jonathan Dowdall saga, and I think you probably deserve a bit of a rest, Michael. What time is it there where you are now? Probably much later, is it? 20 to 20 to 6. Oh, Janie. All right, go get your dinner. Thanks for coming and talking to us this week, and thanks everybody for listening.
All right, thanks everybody.